Is that Dunkin's new holiday blend coffee?
Sure is. Because sometimes the holidays just call for Dunkin'.
What's in it? A spark of holiday spirit?
A cup full of holiday cheer?
Your very own holiday shopper?
Actually, all that. And notes of molasses and dried fruit. Just the warming blend I need for that holiday hustle.
Ah.
Sit through the holidays with the $2 medium holiday blend coffee at Dunkin'. America runs on Dunkin'. Participation may vary. Limited time offer. Exclusions apply.
Welcome to the Boneyard with Steve Robertson. As always, I am your good friend and host, Steve Robertson, here on the Maroon Friday edition of the Yard. Hope you're wearing maroon today. It's the day that we identify ourselves with the greatest university in the history of the state of Mississippi, the greatest athletic programs this state has ever seen. We're great. Now's the day to show a little pride. I'm a Bulldog. Proud to be a Bulldog. Hope you are as well. Let everybody know that you're a Bulldog. Since we were together last, Mississippi State has won an intercollegiate basketball game on the men's side. Off to a 1-0 start. A couple of easy moments in that ball game. Got a little bit ragged there late in the first half, I guess. Mississippi State 37-26 leaders at the break, come out and actually improve upon their offensive production in the second half, win 38-23 in the second half. Final score of 75-49 over North Alabama. We should win those games comfortably. We did, without two starters. I suspect Rocket Watts and Tolu Smith will be back sooner rather than later. Coach Ben Howland says in postgame he hopes that Rocket Watts is available on Wednesday. Tolu Smith a little bit later in the month. But they'll have some time to figure some things out against some quality non-conference foes before we begin Southeastern Conference play. That'll be here before we know it. 6,671 fans paid to see it. Pretty good crowd for an opening midweek game. So tip of the cap to all of you that came out and attended. I'll give you a quick analysis here. Run down some numbers. Garrison Brooks in his Bulldog debut. Very, very efficient night. 28 minutes of action. 8 of 15 from the floor. 2 of 4 from the line. That's probably the one blemish on the Bulldog resume. His free throw shooting was a bit of an adventure. Pulls down 5 rebounds. Commits just 2 personal fouls. A pair of turnovers. A block. 18 points to lead the Bulldogs. Iverson Molinaro. We know what he can do in maroon and white. 30 minutes of action. Just 5 of 13 from the floor. Got a little bit better in that respect. 1 of 5 from beyond the three-point line. Hit both of his free throws. Pulled down a couple of boards. No personal fouls committed. 3 assists, 2 turnovers. Would like to see the assist numbers go up with him. Even though, listen, we want him to shoot, especially when Rocket Watts gets back. 13 points for him. Looking at the rest of your starters, Shaquille Moore. 29 minutes of action, 3 of 7, 8 points for him, 3 steals, 3 personal fouls. Perhaps the hero of the day did not lead us in scoring. Cameron Matthews, 25 minutes of action, 3 of 5 from the floor, 6 and 8, 6 offensive boards, 8 defensive boards, 14 total. How about that? 3 personal fouls, 4 assists to lead the team. How often do you see that from a forward? Just a pair of turnovers, a pair of blocks, 2 steals, really making havoc on the defensive end. People forget how good that kid is. 7 points. DJ Jeffries, the final starter, making also his Bulldog debut, 30 minutes of action. 4 of 6 from the line, knocked down a 3, 4 boards, an assist, a turnover, 2 blocks, 2 steals, 7 points. Not a bad start. Cam Carter, off the bench, knocks down 11. In 19 minutes. That's pretty productive. 4 of 4 from the floor. Like what we've seen there. Could be a very, unsung hero on this team. Derek Fountain, one of the heroes late last year, really kind of caught fire at times last year. 20 minutes for him and just the 4 points, but also pulled down 5 rebounds. So, we've got we have some depth here. Javian Davis, a former Alabama transfer, played 13 minutes of action, some of the most extensive action of the reserve players in the post. just the 2 points, but pulled down 7 big rebounds, 4 of those on the offensive end. Committed no personal fouls. That's kind of been an issue with him, learning to play without fouling. And I don't know that we need him to be a prolific scorer. But a good night. Also, Isaac Stansberry, the son of former Bulldog head coach Rick Stansberry, gets into the game late, commits a personal foul, gets his name in the box score. So again, pretty nice night for the Bulldogs, 3 double-digit scorers. A lot of people got their name into the stat column. Alden Applewhite with the basket, Justin Rumpf with the three-pointer. State 6 of 18 beyond the arc. That's got to get better. Perimeter shooting, not really our strong suit on the first ball game of the year. Free throw shooting, not great either. But we still managed to win by 75 points on the night. We didn't shoot it well from long, and we were short 2 players. So good start for the Bulldogs. 14 of 30 in the first half, 13 of 26 there in the second half. We shoot 48.2% total, 33.3% from beyond the arc, and just 57% free throw shooting. Got to get a lot better there. 38 points in the paint, 24 points off turnovers, very opportunistic in that respect. 9 second chance points, and that's attributed to those offensive boards, but we got to do a little bit better job there too. Fast break points, 23, and then 22 off the bench. The lead changed hands just one time. That was in the early going. So again, Mississippi State, very efficient, good start, good crowd. Not a great crowd, not a great showing. Expect that to improve in the weeks ahead. Now, Saturday, we're going to play Montana at 6 p.m. Humphrey Coliseum. Tickets still available. Come out and support the Bulldogs. I will be at Auburn. Matter of fact, once we get done with the show, I've got a couple things to write over on Gene's page, and then going to hit the road, man, to Auburn. I love the trip, man. I do. I enjoy going over to Auburn. I know many of you are still not over the Cam Newton rub with them. Perhaps cost us a chance to win the SEC West. Looking ahead at Montana, the Grizzlies, 74-27 winners over Dickinson State on Tuesday. So, pretty good start for them too, especially on the defensive end. And some of that's got to do with the quality of competition that they played. They hold Dickinson State 22.2% from the floor, just 12 of 54. 5% from the three-point line. Sounds like Dickinson State just kind of picked 5 kids out of the student section to go play. Montana, they had 3 double-digit scorers. Josh Bannon with 15, Kyle Owens with 12, and then Derek Carter Hollinger with 10, and Owens and Carter Hollinger coming off the bench. So not a lot of scoring from 4 of the 5 starting spots, but still 74 points. I'm sure they feel pretty good about life. Did not do a great job on the offensive glass. Just 5 rebounds on the offensive end, 36 on the defensive end, 41 total. Nobody really got in any foul trouble, nor should they in a game like that. So that's what we're looking at. And, of course, Mississippi State should win the game. That's the hope, certainly. And, Bulldogs, again, we know what we expect this year. We expect to be a tournament team, so we got to get rich against these teams. Montana Grizzlies 15-13 last year, so it wasn't a great team. Played some Power 5 opponents, didn't do quite as well. Lost to USC, Georgia. They did defeat Washington last year, pretty big win there. They lose a close one at Arizona too, 70-64. Not that Arizona is a program that is what it once was with Lute Olson as the head coach, but. Give them some credit for scheduling, pretty aggressively there in the non-conference. But so they will be a decent opponent. But, the talent differential at certainly should favor Mississippi State. So excited to see what happens in the ball game. And, again, we will be on our way back from Auburn. Might even be pretty close to the state of Mississippi by the time this ball game tips. So we won't be able to make them both. But we'll get back in time, obviously, to enjoy Starkville on a Saturday night for those of you that are making the trip over to Auburn. Remember, it's 11 a.m. kick. Maybe that favors us, maybe it doesn't. I've had varying opinions over the years. I've talked to Derek Sherrod once about this, and he said he hated the 11 a.m. kick on the road. Liked it at home, didn't like it on the road because everything is kind of sped up. You travel over there, and you say you want to go to bed early, but you got to get up early, and Breakfast is early. There's meetings. You got to get taped up. There's just a lot to it. And the crowd is somewhat subdued too. And we've had some pretty good successes over the years on the road at 11 a.m. So we'll see. And we'll talk more about that game a little bit later in the show. But again, congratulations to Ben Howland and the Bulldogs to getting off to a good start. We'll see how things kind of progress from here. But, looking at the schedule, you would hope that the Bulldogs are 5-0 by the time they play Louisville out in the Bahamas. That's the hope. This time last year, we were already lamenting an early loss. Iverson Molinaro didn't play in that ball game. But should be able to get off to a 5-0 start. And that's what we need. And we really need these games. We don't need to be nail-biters. You know what I'm saying? We need to kind of win, probably show some cohesion on the offensive end. We know that they're going to battle on the glass on the defensive end. And sometimes offensively, this team can be kind of boring to watch. We don't do a whole lot of high-flying type stuff. We did on the break, against the guys in North Alabama. And some of that, too, is just out-athleting people. But the reality is, I expect this to be a tournament team. I'm not a huge Ben Howland fan. You can say, well, Steve, he's our coach. And, yeah, I'm a huge Mississippi State guy. I feel that we've underachieved at times. But I think nobody, perhaps in this conference, had a better, off-season than maybe Ben Howland did. Working the transfer portal and getting some guys that can come in here and fill some vacancies and be able to contribute. And even though we've lost DJ, I think we've got a chance to be a really good team this year. So excited about the team, excited about the start, excited about what's to come. I know many of you absolutely love college basketball. I used to be the same way. I love Mississippi State, and so I cheer for the Bulldogs whenever we play in all courts and fields of play. But there was a time, we had this discussion, with a friend of mine, Jerome Nettles, a couple days ago. We drove from Baton Rouge up to watch Mississippi State play Alabama to win the West here several years ago. Charles Rhodes comes out, kisses the M State on the floor, and we just felt like we couldn't lose. And we didn't. It was senior day. Felt like we needed to be here for those guys to send them off. They sent us off with a win. And, this program has had some struggle since then. And my hope is that maybe we have reached some stabilization in many respects. I would like to see Ben Howland go out and do a good job this year, have a great year, sign a nice contract extension, and then us to be headed in the right direction. I believe Ben Howland can do that. I do. I really do. And I do think that, the fact that we've only had one NCAA tournament appearance in his tenure here is a bit of a surprise. And the fact that we were upset in the first round, very much a disappointment. But that's behind us now. Now it's about this team, this season, this year. And like all of you, I'm optimistic about the year. Don't know how deep we can get in the tournament. I feel pretty confident that we can make it as long as we can stay healthy. And the good thing is that we do have some depth. We haven't always had depth under Ben Howland. We had some guys that were reaches recruiting-wise. We had some guys leave. But I believe that for the first time really since Ben Howland's been here, we have some quality depth. We'll be able to play a little bit deeper in the ball game, stay a little bit fresher. So there you go. Let's thank our friends at Bulldog Burger Company, longtime sponsors of this show. I'm a big fan of theirs too. Bulldog Burger Company never disappoints. I had lunch there earlier this week, and I did have the BLT salad. And again, didn't finish it. But I also got the Shipley's Donut Bread Pudding as a dessert. Man, you can't beat that, man. It's outstanding. Save some room for that when you go. And tell them that I sent you. You'll be glad. Maybe you even get an extra scoop of ice cream. Maybe you get a bigger scoop. I got mine with ice cream. Maybe you choose not to. I'm a bread pudding fan. And then when all of a sudden you begin to mix all that together and say, we're going to put Shipley donuts in there and, some ice cream, I'm pretty excited about that. You can get that at all three locations, right here on University Drive in Stark Vegas, Gloucester Street there in Tupelo, the brand new one, Lake Harbor Drive in the Ridge and Flowwood area. Go by, check them out. It's good for a night out with the family or a night out with friends. You can have an adult beverage, full-service bar there, and obviously the best restaurant quality hamburgers you can find. Bulldog Burger Company, the place where people go to meet. MEAT. All right, the last couple of weeks we've had kind of thin soup when it's come to SEC football. We've had some great games. We just hadn't had a lot of them. So let's take a look at the weekend. I've already submitted my picks to Mike Nemeth. I'm actually trailing. And a lot of it's because I've had too much faith in Missouri this year. That's kind of the difference. I've picked Missouri to win some games. Other people have picked against them. And that's really the difference in our standings. And so I got to pick up, man. But I'll be honest with you, I still kind of believe in Missouri. Their defense is a joke. But offensively, they can still get out there and do some things. So the first game, there are 3 11 a.m. games. We are the only SEC game. We're going to be on ESPN. But New Mexico State's going to be at Alabama. Kind of a breather, for Alabama. And it's crazy, too. Alabama, the number 2 team in the country, but nobody's really talking about them. They're going to win the West, and it's going to be pretty easy. But, when you look at this thing, this Alabama team, if it's possible, is kind of flying under the radar a little bit. Alabama with a 1-game lead over Texas A&M, 5-1 in the league, A&M 4-2. And so A&M, theoretically could catch them. And A&M, of course, holds a tiebreaker. So if A&M and Alabama finish with the same conference record bar and it's just a 2-way tie, then A&M goes to Atlanta. Might be better for the conference long term. I don't think Texas A&M is a team that is capable of winning the national championship. I think Alabama could be. Don't know so much about A&M. But Alabama, again, no worries this weekend. And Alabama, 8-1 overall. Not a lot standing in their way between another trip to Atlanta. Looking at their schedule, New Mexico State, and then they host Arkansas before traveling to Auburn. So they'll play some bowl teams down the stretch, just they want this weekend. So that'll be, that should be one of those ridiculous scores. I mean, it absolutely should be. But you begin to break this thing down, and you begin to think, okay, well, if A&M is going to win out, then Alabama really has no margin for error. And I don't know if they've got anybody on the schedule that's really capable of beating them without Alabama just kind of giving the game to them. Even though they have to go to Auburn, and you never know what's going to happen in that ball game. I just think Alabama's prolific enough offensively to pull away. And I think Bo Nix, even at home, will have a difficult day against that Crimson Tide defense. And it's not the defense it has been, right? I mean, everybody's talking about the Georgia defense, and rightfully so. But this is an Alabama team, I think, that probably is right where they need to be. I'm sure Nick Saban's probably happy that Georgia's getting the headlines. That's a real teachable moment. It's like, hey, listen, look at where we are. We're number 2 in the country. Nobody's even talking about us. We're being disrespected. Let's go out and show them. Let's win all these games, and then we'll go beat Georgia and Atlanta, and we'll prove to everybody before the playoff starts, we're capable of winning a championship. I'll be honest with you, though. I don't know that they can beat Georgia. Well, we may get to see them play twice. And if you love college football, you love that sort of stuff. Samford at Florida. Has anybody had a worse couple of weeks than Dan Mullen? I mean, honestly. It's miserable. I guess John Hevesy, you could make an argument. John hadn't had a good couple of weeks. Florida now 4-5 in the league and 2-5 in the SEC. And you look at this and say, okay, well, they should still win out. But 7-5 at Florida, with what they have coming off an SEC East championship? Nah, come on, man. Come on, Dan, get it together. They will absolutely baste Samford this weekend. That's in the swamp. What's going to be interesting is, Christian Robinson, former Ole Miss linebacker and former quality control guy, GA, I guess, at Mississippi State in their Tiger Anthem. He is calling the defensive plays at Florida. That's a big job, and I really like him. I really, really do. He is a great guy. I think that he is going to be a guy that really kind of rises up the ranks of the coaching profession. I won't be the least bit surprised to find out that he is a defensive coordinator at a G5 school here in a couple of years. Very intelligent guy, very personable, will be a great recruiter, and we'll get a chance to kind of build a resume a little bit here in the final 3 weeks because this Florida defense has really struggled. And you would say, well, Steve, I don't understand that. Well, I had a Florida staffer tell me last year postseason, Steve, we just don't have any dudes on defense. We got some coming, but we just don't have any. You look at the last 3 weeks, LSU puts up 49, Georgia puts up 34, South Carolina puts up 40. You don't see those scores at Florida. You might see them at Florida State. You don't see them at Florida. But they'll drill Samford, and then they travel to Missouri, and that's going to be interesting. That's going to be a very interesting game. I felt all along that was one Mizzou might be able to get. Had no clue their defense would be in the shape that it is. But also, did you think that Florida would be 5-5 going to Como, looking to earn bowl eligibility? But Florida should be favored in these final 3 games. But based on what we know about Dan Mullen, who knows? It's possible they could lose 2 of the last 3. They got to win 2 of the last 3 to get bowl eligibility. They could lose 2 out of 3. They could beat Samford and then lose on the road at Mizzou and then lose at home to Florida State. And then if you're Scott Strickland, you probably have to kind of reach out to some guys and put a big check together. And you can say, Steve, there's no way they fire him after an SEC East Championship 1 year removed. And I think that's probably true. But I also think, too, that there are a lot of people that are influential in Florida football that aren't going to sit around and let Dan Mullen dismantle their program. It takes a special coach to coach a blue blood team. It really does. And I've had some discussions with some Florida media members and some fans here in recent days. I went over their message board and shared a few comments and had some people reach out via the Gene's Page 247 inbox. And they're very concerned. They're worried that this is a harbinger of things to come. That a 7-5, 6-6 type year will be replicated next year. Because they're going to miss some pieces too next year. They're going to have some guys go pro. And what's amazing to me is, when Dan Mullen was here at Mississippi State, we had great culture. We had amazing culture at Mississippi State. Dan wasn't always the easiest guy to be around, but the guy produced winning football teams. Now you can, an 8-4 year at Mississippi State's a really good year. We're pretty excited. You do that at Florida a couple of years, you're updating your resume. And in many respects, I think Dan Mullen's kind of been exposed this year. I mean, really. It's like because he played Alabama close early in the year, everybody's like, oh, hey, Florida's taking the next step. And why wouldn't you think that, right? They win his first couple ball games, and then they host number 1 Alabama. They lose by 2. They got well behind in that ball game. But they came back. Kind of the same thing that happened in Atlanta. A lot of people didn't give them a chance last year. Now they went to Atlanta and really made a game of it. Then they drilled Tennessee, and you're thinking, okay. Everything is good. They're going to win the East. It'll be a rematch to Alabama. They just got to get through Georgia. And what do? They stump their toe against Kentucky. And at that point, they were out of the SEC East race. But interesting times in Gainesville, Florida, to say the least. The other 11 a.m. game is us. I picked Auburn to win this game. And there are a couple reasons why. Number 1, Auburn Jesus. People say, well, Steve, what does that mean? Well, just, Auburn always seems to, somebody saves them in the end. Whether it be the officials, usually it's the officials. A lot of times it's the officials. But they always have the mojo. It's kind of like, when you go beat LSU. You don't have to just beat them. You got to beat the voodoo priestess and everybody else involved. It's difficult to win on the road at Auburn. We have not done a lot of that in our history. No, we have, and we remember those games because that is really kind of the exception rather than the rule, right? So we have played those guys a lot of times. They've beaten us 65 times. We have just 27 wins all time against Auburn. Some of those have come on the plains. Our last win, of course, 2018, 23-9 winners. And that game was not without some hard feelings from Auburn. Nick Fitzgerald gets in at the goal line. They called a touchdown. They review it. It's inconclusive. Auburn people said they were sure he was short. I don't think anybody can say with any authority whatsoever. But the call on the field stood. But they lose 23-9. Then you've got the big run late. We run him down, force a fumble, and recover, and it was a clear fumble. Now, they're mad about it. And that was interesting, too. It's like, we talk about all the officiating back then in 18, and everybody's like, well, Mississippi State had those 2 fumbles. No, we didn't. It was a fumble. It was clearly a fumble. And anybody that says otherwise is just a homer for Auburn or somebody just trying to be difficult. State wins the ball game. That's our only win in our last 5 opportunities against them. And a lot of these games have not been competitive. I think this one will be. Dak and the crew beat them over there in 15. Of course, we win the big game here in 14 that takes us to number 1 in the country. We lost in 13. You remember that one, right? Remember that wild game? It's crazy. We win in 12. So for a stretch there, it's 3 out of 4 years that we beat Auburn. So it's been more competitive as of late. But the reality of it is that there have been some good games against Auburn that we have lost. There have been some others that we have just not even been competitive in. I think about that 2017 game. That was after we went down to play Georgia. And they dial us up and just smoke us. And then we went over and played Auburn and just really weren't competitive. 2019, Joe takes our group over there. And the game was decided before the first quarter was over. We were just so ready to get out of there. It was a miserable experience. We get beat 56-23. I don't expect that this week. I do expect Auburn to be up to play us. I think this is also a game that you look at and say, you know what? This is a game that requires some real focus for Auburn because they're not in a situation where they can take us for granted. We're as good as they are. And I think deep down they probably know that. They're 6-3 overall. We're 5-4. We hadn't played our FCS game like they have. We still got that to go. They've only got 2 games left after us, and that's Auburn at South Carolina. Should be a win. And then they host Alabama. Should be a loss. So if they beat us, they're looking at 8-4 a year. Probably a good start to Bryant Harson's career. But, it's the deal, too, with Auburn. With Gus, that was kind of how it always was, right? Those 8-4 years just weren't good enough. But I think we lose a close one. As much as I want to pick us and as much as I want us to win, I just think it's too much for us to overcome. And then we'll beat Tennessee State next week, and that'll make us bowl eligible. Then we'll beat Ole Miss. And then we'll feel great about life and say, you know what, hey, 7-5. We won 4 games total last year, including the bowl game. We won our bowl game this year. You've won 8, so you've doubled your win total with just about everybody coming back next year. All right, Georgia and at Tennessee, that's your 2:30 CBS game. And Tennessee has found some offense as of late. They got their, I guess you would call it a signature win. By beating Tennessee last week. And again, some officiating issues in that ball game that have led to some comments. Mark Stoops basically saying he doesn't even want to send in the tapes to the SEC office anymore because it doesn't make any difference. I wonder if he gets fined for that. But the reality of it is it's not us. It's not just us. That's what everybody wants to make you think. It just happens to you. It's a you problem, not a league problem. Guys, there is an officiating problem within this league. I said this on Facebook Live last night. People said, well, Steve, how do you fix it? I have the idea. I know exactly how to fix this thing. I do. Nobody wants to hear it, but I have it. So whatever we're paying officials, double it. And as a result, you overpay everybody. But it protects the integrity of the game. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to pay better than everybody else. And so we're going to attract the best officials in the country. We're not just going to go get the guys that live in the Southeast. That's what we're going to do. We're going to say, you know what, we're going to be like Mike Leach. We're going to have open tryouts for officials, and we're going to pay them better than anybody in all of college football. But we're also going to hold them to a higher level of scrutiny. And here's what we do. You make a game-changing call that costs one of our league member institutions a ball game, you're done. There's not a second chance. There's not. You're going to see what you call. You're going to call what you see. And if you make a call, and it's one thing to miss a call. If you miss a call, sometimes that's just kind of part of the human experience. I just didn't see it, or maybe it's a judgment call. But if you make a call, you are authoritatively stating, hey, this is an infraction. If it is not an infraction and you call it as such, and it costs a team the ball game, you're finished. You'll be in the Southland Conference the rest of your career. We're never going to hire you again. We're not going to do it. And you know what? The best of the bunch, not the best crew, but the best officials will then work the SEC championship game and have a sizable bonus. And then everybody else will get a ball game. And then we'll bonus you for that too. We're going to pay you better. We say it just means more, then why are we still trotting these same dunces out there week after week after week, letting them make the same mistakes and sullying the brand of SEC football? And I don't know why that's not talked about more. Because it's never about an individual game. We're sullying our own brand, Greg, by letting this stuff continue. So pay them more. And we say, well, Steve, it's just a part-time job. Okay, fine. Let it be a part-time job, but pay them more than you pay everybody else. Considerably more I don't want to get any messages and say, well, they're already paying like $1,000 more a game. No. I'm talking pay them to the point that they depend on that money. Pay them to the point that say, you know what, I better not screw up in this ball game. I've got to give my best effort at all times. And then, Kentucky comes out and says, hey, we had the face mask penalty that went uncalled. And it was a face mask. We all saw it. And then they flag Mark Stoops for daring to be upset about it. Now it brings up a 4th and 24, and lo and behold, they convert. Ball don't lie. But that's the thing, too. If I'm a commissioner of the SEC, these guys are not just going to be accountable to whoever the director of officiating is. Now, you're going to be accountable to me. And if I find out that you made a call that changed a ball game, that created a loss for one of the schools that I'm overseeing, you're done. You are not more important than a team. You as an individual. Nobody's paying to come watch you officiate a game. But at the end of the day, your role in that game is the most important. And so I'm going to pay you better, but I'm going to hold you accountable. Because you know what's going to happen? When I fire you, I'm going to have about 50 other officials. They're going to be in my inbox saying, you know what, Steve, I'll take that job. I'll take it. I won't make that call. I'll cash that check, though. Money changes everything. Money moves everything. So make a commitment. You don't think the fans in our conference are willing to pay an extra $1 a game to ensure that we pay the best officials in the country? You might even get some guys from the NFL. You might even be able to outbid them. Go get the best officials you can get, because the brand of the SEC is damaged in many respects. You can say, well, Steve, we're still going to have all these bowl teams. So what you're really telling me is you're putting money in front of integrity. It doesn't matter if we mess up as long as we get, 10, 12 teams bowl eligible and everybody gets to go. Mississippi State, you're going to be bowl eligible. It's never going to be the Great Bowl, but you're going to get a bowl game every year, and you'll get a good one every 3 or 4 years. But you're never going to get the great one because you're Mississippi State. But why not do this? Why not say, you know what we're going to do? We're going to change our focus. We're not going to keep defending these officials. We're not going to keep putting our brand in jeopardy over a person. Because that's what we're doing now. We're saying basically that Matt Holloman, the SEC official that waved his hands, that blew the punt dead at Memphis, and I don't know if you guys, I haven't checked. I didn't check the box scores last week, but he hadn't done an SEC game since then. But we're not going to just go say, hey, listen, here's the deal. We're not going to handle it quietly. We're not. Not when I'm in charge. So you know what? Hey, guys, here's what we're going to do. I believe in keeping it real. We made a big mistake in this ball game against Mississippi State and Memphis, and ultimately it was a big play that changed the flow of the ball game. Matt Hollyfield, our official on that play, blew it dead, and then when asked about it, apparently did not communicate that to the white hat. And then the replay official missed it, and you know what? He's out too. So Matt Hollyfield and the replay official, both of those guys are done the rest of the year in the SEC and possibly forever. And we're going to make that public. And people are going to respect us. They're going to say, you know what? The SEC is serious about having integrity in their games. Because if you screw up in the SEC, you're going to forfeit that huge check, and they're going to make your name public. And then other people are going to be like, you know what? I don't know if I want this guy officiating my games. He doesn't understand the basic rules of the game. Not to mention just the ethics involved. It's like, okay, why not just go to the white hat and say, hey, guys, I screwed up. I did. I thought he was down. I saw Martin Emerson with a knee on the ground. He patted the ball down. No, he didn't grab it. No, he didn't cover it. No, he didn't hand it to me. But that's what I saw. I saw him down in contact with the football, and you know what? I blew it. But he apparently couldn't even do that. And so that's my theory on how we can fix this. I'm not going to belabor the point long, but that's how I feel about it. And again, it's not just us that feels that way. And of course, Alabama's not going to come out and say anything, right? I mean, how many times have you heard Jimbo Fisher talking about officiating this year? How many times? I'm going to call those guys tomorrow. They're going to give me an explanation on that. And so if it's happening to Kentucky, if it happens in an Auburn game, if it happens to Ole Miss, and last year Ole Miss got absolutely screwed in that deal where the guy touched the football and Ole Miss recovers and end zone for a touchdown. You say, well, it couldn't happen to a nicer bunch, and that's true. But this is an epidemic. This is not something that is just a Mississippi State problem. This is an SEC problem. And I worked for a guy named Jim Glover indirectly. He was my boss's boss when I worked for Holly Myers Furniture. And I respected Jim Glover, one of the best guys I've known in the retail industry. And Jim said something in really respects kind of changed my life. He goes, Steve, whenever you get tired of it, you'll do something about it. I've always remembered that. He goes, whenever you get tired of it, you'll fix it. And that's how I feel about this. Whenever Greg Sankey gets tired of it, he'll fix it. He's not tired of it yet. Because if he was tired of it, he would do something about it. He would bring meaningful change, and he would get this thing corrected. And it's amazing to me, as intelligent and brilliant as Greg Sankey is, that we are still having to deal with this. I tweeted out the picture of the block in the back that wasn't on Dedrick Thomas from that 17 game. Or was it 18 game? 3 years ago. I tweeted that out yesterday. And as I'm looking at that picture, because it popped up on my Facebook memories, and I thought, nothing's really changed. 3 years. We've had 3 years to work on this. Not changed. Now, I don't know if Jeff Batts has called any more SEC games since then, so there obviously has been some level of accountability there. But if we're still repeating the same behaviors, we haven't fixed the problem. We may have disciplined the offending official, but we have not fixed the problem. So let's fix the problem. Let's get back on track here. Tennessee, of course, gets their big signature win at Lexington last week. They upset number 18, Kentucky. And I had some people on the Gene Spade's message board when we got ready to play Kentucky telling me they were a top 20 team. I said, for now. And just so you guys know, if you're not paying attention, Kentucky has now lost 3 in a row. 6-3 overall, 4-3 in the league. They lost 3 in a row. Tennessee gets them. But again, some controversy late that's not really involving Tennessee. But Tennessee, when you look at this thing now, they're 5-4, and they're looking, they're looking like a 7-5 team too. They get Georgia this weekend. That'll be a loss. Then they get South Alabama and Vanderbilt. Both of those should be blowout wins. And so you're looking at a 7-5 year in Knoxville. Is that a big year? No, it's not. But I think they've done enough to show they're moving in the right direction. You go back and think about this. They destroyed Missouri. They beat South Carolina. Should have beaten Ole Miss. They should have. But give Ole Miss credit for winning the ball game. They did. They're in the game against Alabama for a while. They beat Kentucky on the road. How can you argue against the fact that, hey, Tennessee is moving in the right direction? They absolutely are. The 3 o'clock SEC Network game that is basically the game that they're just kind of like hiding in plain sight, that runs opposite the CBS game. It's a game that nobody's going to watch except for the fans of those teams. South Carolina, Missouri. I picked Missouri in this game, and there's a couple reasons why. I think South Carolina's heads are still in the clouds a little bit after beating Florida last week. I think Missouri is a team, too, that offensively can cause some problems, and South Carolina continues to have some quarterback issues. Didn't really show last week, did it? So this is a toss-up game, but I'm going to pick Mizzou. I guess I had probably been a Missouri homer this year. Hadn't worked out as well as I'd hoped. South Carolina also, too, now in the bowl picture. Got a real chance to make it. And this is probably your best chance to win a ball game. So that'll be a tightly contested game. I do think Missouri wins it. I just don't think South Carolina can win the shootout. I think Florida kind of quit last week. All right, the primetime game, and hopefully we'll be able to watch some of this. It's one good thing about, about getting our 11 A&M game out of the way is we get our game played. Hopefully we win that thing. You can watch that great Georgia-Tennessee game, and then you've got some pretty good games at night on Saturday. A&M at Ole Miss. I don't think the matchup favors Ole Miss, and I've said that for weeks. I love Isaiah Spiller. I do. Like him more than a friend. That guy is I hope the Steelers draft him. He's probably not a first rounder, but that guy's a pro. And you look at what they've done with their complimentary backs. All of a sudden, Zal Calzada's beginning to play well. Jimbo's figured some things out. A&M, I still think, has a great chance to win out. I think Ole Miss is in some trouble. Because I think that what's going to happen is A&M is going to be able to run the football with regularity. And I think they are good enough on defense to get stops. And the next thing you know, when you go down a couple scores to a team like A&M that can run the football and shorten the game on you, you got to go make a play. And Ole Miss has been beat up. They got a couple guys going to try to give it a go this weekend. But they have not been healthy to their, not to make excuses for them, but this is not an Ole Miss team at full strength. Even though it's at Oxford, I just think A&M is a bad matchup. And I don't think Ole Miss has a talent on defense to really slow them down. So if A&M goes down there and doesn't turn the football over, I think they're going to win probably 2 possessions. I really do. And I think this Ole Miss team is really, really, really beat up. And this is such an unforgiving league. It's like once you get your FCS game behind you, you can't really rest people. You look at this, Ole Miss game, next week against Vanderbilt, and that's at Oxford too. We get Tennessee State. We ought to be able to, rest our guys in the second half. I know Ole Miss would love to be able to rest guys, and they'll beat Vandy handily. But they're still going to be playing some SEC caliber football players. Maybe not what they normally see. I'd much rather play an FCS team rather than Vanderbilt. And you say, well, it's still kind of a week off. Listen, Ole Miss will beat Vanderbilt. But they'll probably have to play their guys a little bit deeper in the ball game. And on a short week, maybe that makes a difference, especially for a team that's a little bit roster challenged right now due to health. But again, looking at Ole Miss now, 7-2, so they're going to be 8-4, worst case scenario, right? I mean, and here's the thing too: is even at 9-3, it's a good year. It's not a great year. It's a good year, not a great year. And then when you think about the fact you've got a Heisman caliber quarterback, you still couldn't win the West, and possibly locked out of the New Year's Day 6. It's in many ways, I think you could look at it and say, yeah, it's a step up from what they've had, but it's probably not what it should have been. And then you look at what they're losing. It could be an interesting rebuild next year in Oxford, for sure. All right, and so Kentucky, Vanderbilt, look, Kentucky's lost 3 in a row. They're going to win this week. I don't know that Vanderbilt can keep this thing close. I really don't. I think Kentucky's mad, and they should be. They feel like last week that they got their short end of the stick with the officiating, so they're not going to leave the game in the hands of the officials. And that's the thing you look at, too. It's like after a frustrating loss, what do you need more? A hapless opponent. Vanderbilt obviously not good. But, again, they might be able to hang in for a quarter or so. But Kentucky is facing a 2-7 team that lost earlier this year to East Tennessee State in the SEC play outside of the South Carolina game. They have not been in ball games. Vanderbilt hung in there a little bit for a while with Mizzou. But that was really more about Mizzou. Very much so. And so they likely won't win another game. So they're looking at 2-10. And 0-8 in the league. Don't have to worry about that for a while. And then Arkansas LSU, that's the nightcap. That's the 6:30 game on the SEC network. And I'm going to be honest with you, I like LSU in this ball game. And I thought LSU kind of quit on Ed Orgeron a little bit right after the quote resignation. But look at what they did last week against Alabama. I mean, look at what they did. I think also, too, a 6-6 LSU team, and that's what I think they're going to be. I don't think they get a better bowl game than Mississippi State because of all the the issues there. So we'll see how things progress. I think LSU is going to win the ball game. I think LSU is going to beat Arkansas, and there's a couple reasons why. Number one, LSU is built to stop the run. That's what they're good at, and you saw that last week. They held Alabama to 6 yards rushing. Alabama. Not Alabama State, not Auburn, not Mississippi State. Alabama to 6 yards rushing. Well, what does Arkansas want to do? They want to run the football. Well, we showed last week, we can kind of hold them under their average. We held them 50 yards under their average. And LSU has some injury issues in the secondary. I just don't think KJ Jefferson is proficient enough to really exploit those issues. I don't like the matchup for Arkansas. And I think LSU is thinking, hey, let's get one more bowl game. They win this one, they get UL Monroe next week. That makes them 6-5 with A&M coming to town. So Ed will have these guys ready to go. And again, they didn't play well at Ole Miss. And I think one of the reasons why, number one, I think everybody was a little bit shocked, but also, too, Ole Miss can throw the football. So they had the opportunity to exploit some of your deficiencies in the secondary. I don't think Arkansas can do that. Now, you could say, well, Steve, Alabama should have been able to do that. And you're right. Which, again, kind of lends to my point that LSU's kind of waking up a little bit. So I think they're going to find a way to win the ball game. I think it'll be interesting. And if Arkansas wins it, hey, I tip my cap, because I just don't think this is a matchup that favors them on the road, a very hostile environment at night against a coach that's got nothing to lose. So recapping quickly, your winners this weekend, I believe they are Alabama, Auburn, Florida, Georgia, Missouri, A&M, Kentucky, and LSU. And it's weird to think that LSU is where they are at this point. We all expected them to struggle this year. I don't think anybody expected them to be, battling for bowl eligibility with just a couple of weeks left in the schedule. Pretty interesting, to say the least. Next segment of the show brought to you by closeatblair.com. So Blair has been on me about the jam band thing. It's not my thing. And I love Blair. I do. He's a friend of mine. But he is, I told him, I said, hey, send me your list of favorites for this particular band, and I'll listen to them, and I'll rank them. How about that? Well, I hadn't got that list yet. So maybe next week we'll do that. I know some of you jam band enthusiasts would like to have a little more diversity on the show. We're going to have some today, but not of the jam band variety. I've got another friend of mine that's a huge Widespread Panic fan. Like, he has, album posters, framed on his wall. He's been to see them maybe 24 times. I'm going to reach out to him because I know that some of you guys are Panic fans. I've got another good friend of mine that sees Widespread every time they come within a reasonable driving distance of Mississippi. So I don't listen to Widespread Panic. I don't. But I have some good friends that do. So I may reach out. Maybe we do them in the weeks to come. So there you go. But today's top 10 list is a very, very important rap group. And to call them just a rap group is almost disrespectful, because their influence in American culture kind of exceeds and well beyond just the rap community. We discussed this band recently when we did the rock rap collaborations. I'm talking about Public Enemy. Now, Public Enemy, kind of a controversial band when they first hit the scene, because they talked about many social issues and things that we were kind of unaware of. They're out of New York. And for those of us in South Mississippi, we just didn't know a lot about these issues. And so it's like you hear these guys speaking so authoritatively and articulately about real-life issues. They became the voice of their community. But what's interesting about Public Enemy, despite their fame and the tens of millions of records they've sold, they've never been really critically acclaimed. 3 platinum albums, 2 gold albums, 15 total albums. But they have never won a Grammy, any of that kind of stuff. They've been kind of the people's champions. And in 2013, they were inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I'm not a big fan of bands outside of the rock genre making the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But if I was going to pick a rap artist, it'd be Public Enemy. Because they have the spirit of rebellion. They do. So here are your top 10 Public Enemy songs. I did not include 911 as a joke, even though that is kind of a legendary song. I didn't, because I think it's a little bit silly. But the reality of it is what Chuck D was talking about. We dial 911, nobody ever comes. So number 10 on the list is Shut 'Em Down. Shut 'em down. You've heard this. You've heard all these songs at some point. You may not have even known the titles. But Terminator X, when he was the DJ of the group, and he was a mobile DJ that did parties and things like that, and when Chuck D was putting his group together, that's who they got initially. Had a handful of DJs over the years, but Terminator X, of course, is the guy that was the guy kind of providing the tracks. And Shut 'Em Down, one of the very first really big hits for them. Number 9, Brother's Gonna Work It Out. Check that out. It's almost like a song of empowerment, too. It's one of those songs that it's like, hey, whatever happens, we're going to figure this thing out. Number 8, most people don't realize this. And if you've watched the movie, He Got Game, Jesus Shuttlesworth, Ray Allen of UConn, who lost to Mississippi State in the Elite Eight, or was it Sweet 16? Great movie. I watch it, like if I ever just stumble across it on TV, I always watch it. Well, Public Enemy provided a soundtrack, He Got Game. The title track is He Got Game. One of their better albums, one of their better songs. Number 7, one of those songs that kind of pushed Flavor Flav to the forefront. It's Don't Believe the Hype. Don't believe the hype. What's interesting, too, Public Enemy, while they were respected, there were a lot of people that would take a shot at Chuck D and Flavor Flav. And I guess they were trying to trade some cred on the fact that Public Enemy had such a huge following. This is kind of about some of that. Number 6, one of the first tracks that Chuck D ever put together. And this is when Chuck was basically a solo MC. And this song kind of remained in the set list for many years. It's Public Enemy number 1. And really it was, the song predates the name of the band. And so when Chuck D was kind of going after, he and another, rival MC or whatever, were kind of getting after each other. This is Chuck D basically saying, this is who I am. I'm Public Enemy number 1. I'm the best. Number 5, this is again one of those songs that evokes a lot of history. I remembered years ago, and if you were one that frequented the Pedal Roller Dome in 1991, I was your DJ. How about that? That was me. And every so often the phone would ring in the DJ booth and say, hey, Steve, can you turn it down? It's a little bit loud. Which is true. I turned those kids on to all kind of stuff. And one of the songs that I turned them on to was Can't Trust It by Public Enemy. I still love that song. I still listen to it. It's a song that makes me a little bit uncomfortable at times, even though I've heard it all these times and all these years. The song's 20 years old, still rings true today. Number 4, Welcome to the Terra Dome. And there are some people that wouldn't have this one as high on their list. I absolutely love this track. I love the music behind it, and I love the lyrics. That's the thing about Chuck D is there's a lot of people that have a lot of good flow, but you can't always make out what they're saying. That's not the case with Chuck D. His delivery is top shelf. Welcome to the Terra Dome. Number 3, Night of the Living Bassheads. He would say, well, Steve, I don't know if I know that one. Yeah, you do. You know it. There's a lot of little one-liners that got sampled out of that song from Chuck and from Flav that other people used in their rap tracks. But Night of the Living Bassheads was one of those that I think that everybody has probably heard more than once. Number 2, this song appeared on the rap rock collaborations with Anthrax. It's Bring the Noise. I love the attitude in this song. I love how in your face it is. I think a lot of people, when they hear it, they don't fully understand this is really kind of an anthem of freedom. It is, and equality. Number 1, in many respects, this is the one that kind of started it all for them. This was the one, when the MTV generation really got fired up, and they didn't play this a lot during the day. But then all of a sudden, Yo MTV Raps and Fab Five Freddy, and then Dr. Dre and Ed Lover came along. And then Fight the Power was played regularly. Number 1 on the list is Fight the Power. A lot of these songs, whether they apply to your daily life or not, can still be inspirational anthems to you. And that's one of the things that I love about Public Enemy, and especially Chuck D. Chuck is a guy that's kind of taking care of himself. Flavor Flav has had a lot of issues, shall we say. But Chuck is a guy that has always spoken so intelligently and articulated so many problems in our society in a way that made it easier for people to digest. It makes us uncomfortable at times, but guys like Chuck D are very necessary in life because they educate us. Whether you agree with all of his politics or not, it is impossible to deny the influence that Public Enemy, Chuck D, have had, not just on the rap community, but on America as a whole. And there are a lot of people that were, really upset, and I didn't include this song on the list, and I very well could have. By the time I get to Arizona, when the state of Arizona elected to abolish the Martin Luther King holiday, and the NFL moved the Super Bowl from Arizona to LA that year because of that decision, that Chuck D spoke out. And the video itself was banned from MTV. They debuted it but because it depicted violence against some government officials and stuff, they took it off the air, which made us want the song that much more. That's kind of how that happens. It's like, hey, they're just trying to silence the truth. And there are a lot of things today that people share on social media that aren't the truth. Even if people believe in them, they just kind of put their own narrative out there and say, oh, you're scared of the truth. Government officials were scared of Chuck D, and not because they felt that he had a propensity to violence, but because he had the ability to incite and had the ability to inspire people to take action. That's what real activism is. It's not just changing your Facebook profile page and putting a little ring around it and say, well, this is what I stand for. That's one of the reasons that I respect a guy like Chuck D so much, is he let his voice be heard. And nowadays, anybody's voice can be heard. That's the best and worst thing about social media. But the reality of it is without guys like Chuck D, there are a lot of people's stories that would never have been told. And again, as soon as all this stuff happened with Arizona, Chuck D's in the studio saying, hey, here's what I've heard, and here's what I think, and here's why this is wrong. And so, again, an incredible catalog, 15 albums to choose from. And again, a lot of them weren't necessarily best-selling albums. That doesn't mean that they don't have some information within them that you need to know. There were a lot of people that were against Public Enemy. You know, like the album Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. You know, a lot of people were against Public Enemy because they spoke out about things that people didn't want told. They told stories that people were against. And there were a lot of people, of course, that they put the advisory lyrics, explicit advisory stickers on their albums. And as a teenager, that just made me want to go buy them that much more. I was like, well, this is what Tipper Gore and the PMRC and us people like that don't want me to listen to. So maybe I should. Maybe I should go listen to this. Because Chuck D wasn't speaking about parties in Miami's and things like that. Chuck D was speaking about real social consciousness. And so that's the top 10 list. I am a Public Enemy fan. I was probably one of the first people in the state of Mississippi to have a Public Enemy hat. Still have such a real affection, for Chuck D and those guys. And even if I haven't always agreed with what he's had to say, I've learned something from him. And there's a lot of people today that are involved in music, and not just in rap, but in music in general, that have absolutely nothing to say. They have nothing to say. They don't believe in anything. They believe in making money. And you know what? I guess in some respects I can respect that. But the thing about Chuck D is Chuck D, because of his outspokenness, probably cost him some record sales and certainly some radio airplay. And he did it anyway. They did it their way. And now they're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Very well deserved. If you have an idea for the top 10 list, reach out and let me know. On Monday, we're going to do a singer-songwriter that, from decades ago. Not like Public Enemy at all. We have a lot of versatility on the top 10 list here on the Boneyard. So if you've got ideas, reach out, let me know. If you're looking for a list, and at least once a day somebody messages me looking for the list, you can save yourself some time and those keystrokes by searching Dogmatic67 on Spotify, if you're on Spotify. Or you can just search Twitter for Dogmatic67 and put in the name of the band, and it'll come up. Izzy Mandelbaum does a great job putting that stuff on Apple Music for us. For those of you that don't subscribe to Spotify, thanks so much for all your ideas. Some of them are very, very good. Some of you guys reach out and say, hey, I'd love for you to do this band. I've already done them, or I can't speak authoritatively about them. But I do have some people around me that enjoy some music that perhaps that I don't. And so I just want to have some credibility when we talk about it, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, if somebody said, hey, Steve, could you do a top 10, Kaja Gugu list? Well, I know Too Shy, and that's the only song I know from them. So, no, I don't think that I could do that list. And I don't think there is like this, grassroots movement of fans today that are big Kaja Gugu fans. But you laugh when you hear that. That song went to number 1. But you laugh, but you'd be amazed at like some of the lists that people send. Say, hey, Steve, could you do this? Could you do that? And keep them coming, because you never know. You never know. We've had Frank Sinatra requested recently. We'll try to work that in here in the coming days. That's been requested a few times. But we'll figure it out. We'll do it our way, right? We've paid our dues. That's top 10 list for today. Next segment of the show brought to you by Campus Bookmart. Standing man, Miss Kathy Brown, lovely, talented Susie, great people, running a great business, providing great merchandise to a great fan base of folks. Go by and see them today. You'll be glad you did. Miss Pam is there as well. Miss Pam Minyard, good friend of mine as well. So glad they made the connection and brought her aboard. She is an absolute great fit there. But if you can't make it to town to see their smiling faces, visit them on the World Wide Web at campusbookmart.net. And by being a loyal Boneyard listener, we'll give you a phrase that pays. And that is BSR. Stands for Beautiful Steve Robertson. And that'll get you free shipping on all orders more than $50. Any order less than $50, absolutely incomplete. And speaking of that, I would be remiss because I missed it when we got ready to talk about top 10 lists. Somebody pulled up. I had to pause the show. We talked about Blair Chandler and close of Blair. He's still willing to pay for your appraisal. He'll pay for your appraisal just by mentioning the Boneyard when you reach out to him. Go to closeofblair.com today. Fill out some information. He'll be in contact with you and say, you know what, Steve, I just don't always have the time to do that, and maybe it's not going to work out. Let me give you Blair's personal cell number. Blair Chandler, a good friend of mine, had him in my phone a long time before he was a sponsor of the show. 601-500-2344. Again, 601-500-2344. And mention to him that you heard about him on the Boneyard, and he'll pay for your appraisal. It's about a $500 value. It's a good time to refi, get your equity working for you. So I apologize. So Blair gets a couple mentions on the show, but I want to make sure that, because what happens is from time to time, somebody will message me and say, hey, I know you've mentioned that Close of Blair thing. Can I have the number? And he's a Bulldog. And you know I believe in doing business with Bulldogs. Matter of fact, I had a meeting yesterday. I won't tell you who with. But, you know, we've got some business stuff we're working on. And I went and met with some people. And I said, hey, tell me a little bit about your background. And he talks about, I was born and raised in Mississippi. I graduated from state. I said, okay, you can stop right there. You can stop right there. Oh, yeah? I said, oh, yeah, because I don't do business with people that aren't Bulldogs unless I can help it. That's just the reality of it. I don't do business with people that are non-Bulldogs unless I absolutely have to. And especially when it's something as important as business and financials and things like that, I'm going to do business with Bulldogs. I don't want other people having access to that information because I believe the Bulldogs protect each other. We're a pack. We're a wolf pack. Used to be a one-man wolf pack, and now I have all of you. So do business with Bulldogs. I encourage you to do so. Keep it in the family. All right, let's talk recruiting a little bit. And it's interesting. You know, a lot of people want to know, hey, what's going on with this, what's going on with that? And so let me run down a few things for you. Let me pull up the in-state rankings at 247 Sports. You can find those. Go over to genespage.com, and there is a tab there. Pretty simple. It says FBREC for football recruiting. And then there's a drop-down menu there that has about, 14, 15 links you can go to just to kind of get information. And so I'm going to click on the player rankings tab here, go to state rankings, and we're going to pick Mississippi. And I'm going to kind of update you on what I know because it's been a pretty active month. So Branson Robinson is still the number one player in the state of Mississippi, and rightfully so. I have him number one. I had Jahim Otis number two for a long time. Branson Robinson, I think, is a freak of an athlete. Will do a great job at Georgia. He has shown no signs of wavering in his commitment to the University of Georgia. And a lot of people say, well, Steve, I don't understand why we weren't more in the game with him. Well, we were early on, and then his recruitment exploded. And he's a guy, too, that wants to carry the football 20, 25 times a game. That Georgia offense kind of fits his skill set pretty much. And so I don't expect any drama with him. I know a lot of people will continue to make a run at him. But I think the way Georgia's playing right now, it makes it awfully easy for him to say, you know what, I'm going to stick with Georgia. And people are like, you know what, I get it, I understand. So I wish him the best. He is a great young man, really, really is. Really, really happy for him. Wish he was going to Mississippi State. But at the same time, too, I understand it and wish him a great career there at the University of Georgia. Number two on the list is Jahim Otis. Jahim Otis, number two. And there were some people early on that had Kamari Rogers number one. He has dropped now. He's there at number three. But let's talk more about Otis. So Jahim Otis is from Columbia High School. That's right, the Columbia High School. I went there. Walter Payton went there. Fred Peters went there. James Harvey went there. Eddie Payton went there. A lot of greatness out of Columbia, Mississippi. And a little sweetness. But Jahim Otis, the next big Wildcat to come through there. And Jahim has the boys playing exceptionally well. We got the new stadium down there. And Jahim is one of those guys, too, that made an early decision And so here is what I know about how that all kind of came to be when it all went down. All right? And so there are a lot of people that say, well, it's Alabama. And it is. But here's the deal. So what I was told is he went over there on a visit and sat down with Nick Saban and they're like, hey, here's the deal. Look, we love you and you're like number one on our list. But here's the deal. If you're not ready to commit, we got to go get number 2 and number 3. And so he committed. And they were like, you know what, hey, if you want to take visits, that's cool too. We're Alabama. We don't worry about that sort of stuff. Well, since that time, he's kind of got to know some other players and teams and coaches and things like that. And he realizes, too, that maybe perhaps the chance to play earlier in his career is probably somewhere other than Tuscaloosa. Now, Alabama's still recruiting him hard. Don't get me wrong. They're not in any way backing off of the kid. But it's going to boil down to State and Alabama. Alabama is Alabama. Mississippi State has produced a ton of defensive linemen. He could come in here and play early. He also is really more of a Mississippi guy. Likes to ride four-wheelers, likes to go hunting, likes to go fishing, likes to fry catfish. Wants to play on a defensive line. Would get the opportunity to do that fairly early at Mississippi State. He's also made some really great relationships with some of your current players who are continuing to kind of answer his questions about kind of life away from all this stuff. And he is expected to be here December the 3rd for his official visit. He may only visit Mississippi State and Alabama. I know some other people have suggested that Ole Miss may get a visit. They have really not been the factor that has kind of been advertised in his recruitment. That's not to say that they won't get a one-day visit or whatever. I know there are a lot of Ole Miss people in my hometown that are pushing Ole Miss. But in the end, I think it's going to be State and Alabama. And I think it is going to be a very difficult decision for him. So at this point, I can't really tell you what I think he's going to do because I don't really have a good feel on that. But Mississippi State very much in the game, and I think State very well could get him. We talked about how well Columbia High School is playing, the way they're playing, also what kind of limit his ability to take some official visits. The Wildcats, the Columbia High Wildcats, 10-1 this year. Their lone loss is a 14-7 loss to Petal. Since that time, they've won 8 in a row. They beat our hated rivals from West Marion, and we do thank them for Colby White. We beat them 56-0. When I was a kid, West Marion High School came over there and put some towels on our field right before homecoming and spelled out WMHS and set them on fire and burned that in our 50-yard line. I think we beat them 70-0. We beat Jeff Davis 34-7, and then we run on down the list here. And so, they play South Pike last weekend in the playoffs, won that game 35-6. They'll play Bay High tonight in a ball game. Columbia likely should have won the state championship last year. And we lose to Chandler Pittman and McGee in the slop up there. And give them credit. They just found a way to kind of get things done. I think Chandler was a big part of that. But it wasn't much of a ball game just because of the fact that the quality of play was so bad. But again, McGee wins the game. But stay in a good spot with Jahim. Just, we've got to continue to work hard and do a good job on the visit. Kamari Rogers committed to Miami long ago. I was the first to crystal ball that, and everybody said, oh, no, he's not going down there. Well, that's where he's committed. Manny Diaz has been announced that he is expected to be retained. That kind of complicates things a little bit. But the reality of it is that State has kind of been a silent suitor in this thing. Kamari now expected to be at Mississippi State December 3rd as well for that big recruiting weekend. Steve Wiltfong of 247 Sports National reports yesterday Kamari not going to visit Ole Miss this weekend. A lot of people projected that to happen. He's not headed that direction. Number 4 on the list, Zavian Harris. I really like Zavian Harris, but I like him as an offensive lineman. 6'8", 335 pounds. Came to camp, worked out as a defensive lineman, was big, not necessarily the most agile. I think this guy could play football a long time as an offensive tackle. I've said that on my show before. And I just don't think he's going to be able to get good pad level playing defensive tackle at 6'8". Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think so. Number 5 on the list is Marquez Dortch. And this is one of the things I want to talk about, too. Marquez Dortch, good friends with MJ Daniels that signed with Ole Miss last year, and you know how all that went. And it's interesting, too. I laugh about this stuff, too. There's all this revisionist history with Ole Miss because, many of their fans are have a BS degree in revisionist history. I said last year that I was worried about MJ Daniels late. Said it on the show, wrote articles about it. Like, well, Steve said that. No, I didn't say that. There are some things at times that I'm wrong about. But about MJ Daniels flipping to Ole Miss, that being a real possibility, even when their people, Yancey Porter included, saying that they expect that kid to stick with State, no. And I said then, I'm worried about it. It's a real possibility. And then all of a sudden on National Signing Day, he flips. And then Marquez Dortch was expected to follow him. Well, Marquez Dortch doesn't want to play defensive back. And here's the thing that it's interesting to me. And if the shoe was on the other foot, we would be talking about this nonstop. Marquez Dortch committed to Ole Miss and really hadn't been up there for anything. Has not attended a game up there all year. You can say, well, Steve, maybe he has trouble getting rides. He's been to Mississippi State games. So if we had a kid committed to Mississippi State that could never make it to our games, but made it to Ole Miss games, would we not expect him to flip? And Dave Johnson has come out and said, yeah, I think this is just a matter of time before he flips. But, you can take kids at their word, but their actions have to kind of match your assessment of all that. Marquez Dortch, I believe right now, is going to flip to Mississippi State. I think that is just simply a matter of time. He also will visit Mississippi State December the 3rd. The number 6 player in the state, Trevion Williams, former Florida State commitment. I feel really, really good about where things stand with him and Mississippi State right now. Ole Miss, a bit of a factor. Not as much as they would like to be, though. He went up there, had to visit, and then has been to Mississippi State a couple times since then. I guess he's been here 3 times this season. I think that's right. And we'll be back December the 3rd. So that'll be interesting as well. Hopefully he can get back for the Egg Bowl. It's difficult, even though it's in-state kids. It's tough to get to the Egg Bowl, because a lot of people, it's a family day, and you get your cousins you only see once a year. So maybe we can get him here for that. Don't know yet. But he also is set to visit Mississippi State December the 3rd. Bryson Hurst, the number 7 player on the list. I love this kid's game. I really do. I think he is a next-level type offensive line prospect, and it is a shame that he's not coming to Mississippi State. He is. I fully expect him to stick with Ole Miss. Unlike Zavian Harris, I don't think he needs a change. And I think he might be able to play right tackle, but I love him on the interior. He is a guy that doesn't shy away from any of that. Good get off. I think he is a great player. I think that his senior film maybe isn't matching his true potential. I think once he gets in a college weight room, he'll be a mauler. And I wish he was going to Mississippi State, but he's not. He's going to Ole Miss. Mississippi State not even really actively recruiting him right now. Aaron Bryant, number 8 player from South Haven, committed to Texas. I expect that to stick. I think Ole Miss will make another late run at him, but I don't think that much is going to change with him. And Aaron, another guy too, State won the first offers for him, and the next thing you know, his recruitment absolutely blows up. And I've said, for a couple of years now, I thought this class was going to be a really good one. And I think all of the guys that we've mentioned so far have a chance to be long-time starters in the Southeastern Conference. Number 9 on the list, Stone Blanton, one of the top undeclared prospects in the state of Mississippi. I still expect it to be Mississippi State. I know there have been some rumblings out there. And listen, let's be honest. If he was completely sold on Mississippi State, he'd already be committed to Mississippi State. Committed to Mississippi State baseball early on. Then his football recruitment blew up. I still expect it to be State. Ole Miss has made this thing awfully interesting. And the fact that he hadn't committed tells me that, hey, he's had some thoughts about going to Ole Miss. I think when you look at that team up there and you say, you know what, hey, they're kind of a fun team right now. They are. And they have been. But I don't know why any kid in the state of Mississippi would want to go play defense at Ole Miss. It just always seems to be the case. The best defensive players in the state of Mississippi usually come to Mississippi State and have good careers. Speaking of that, number 10, Don Terry Russell. Really haven't had any drama with him. He is a guy that really kind of impressed this summer. He's a long, lean guy. Got to put a little weight on, much like his brother, who is really just kind of getting back into football speed. DeMonte Russell there. He missed last year due to injury. Not expecting any trouble there. Larry Simmons, I believe, is a top receiver in the state. He committed to Ole Miss very early. It was a big surprise. He is a guy, too, that has not spent a lot of time in Oxford up there this year. State's still involved with him. I still don't expect to flip him. I still think he'll stick with Ole Miss unless the coaching change at LSU changes the direction of his recruitment down there. Number 12, Khalid Moore out of Poplarville. I absolutely love his game. Absolutely love his game. And I think that he is a guy that will be a great fit. When we look at this Mississippi State defense, and you look at the quality of play we're getting from linebackers, and then you look at the way we're recruiting linebackers right now, I think we feel really good about the future. So that's going to be that's your recruiting update, for today. Just kind of wanted to take the top dozen kids or so and just kind of update you on kind of where things stand with them. We spend a lot of time talking recruiting later in the process, and of course, once the regular season ends here in a couple weeks, we'll kind of be full bore into that. Not to mention, talking about some bowl practices and the bowl picture. But it has been relatively quiet for a while, and we've got some big-name players in the state that are still waiting to announce their decisions. I think State's in a good position with most of those guys. And if I had to call it today, I'm probably 99% on Trevion Williams being a Bulldog. I'm probably about 90% on Marquez Dortch. I think that is just really probably 90 might be a bit conservative. I still think Stone Blanton will be a Bulldog. I think that is well better than 50%. I would also say that the odds of Jahim Otis being a Bulldog are better than 50%. I think it's tough to beat Alabama on a kid they really want. They took a commitment from the Hastings kid earlier this week at essentially the same position. So we'll see how things progress there. I don't think that Nick Saban will be patient with Otis late. We're kind of in that mode where we have to kind of wait out some guys. Alabama doesn't have to do that. They'll just kind of plug and play the next guy on the list. But I do think Jahim Otis, I can't say right now that he is going to be a Bulldog. I do think the chances are better than 50-50, though. I think we have made some real progress with him here in the recent months, and things have been good. And when he committed to Alabama, it was a bit of a surprise, too. Not necessarily the destination, but the timing. And you get a lot of these guys that commit early on, they haven't even really gone through the recruiting process. And, if guys don't have a connection to a school, basically, as Urban Meyer says, you're basically just saying who I have to beat to get that kid. Who do I have to outwork? Who do I have to out-recruit? And so it's a long process, and we're basically just over 30 days away from opening the December signing period. And I think most of these guys are going to sign in December. Jahim Otis, of course, is a January enrollment guy, which really, when you begin to look at his, career path, if, he comes to Mississippi State here for the spring, considering the depth that we have coming back at defensive tackle, there's a good chance he could probably play a dozen snaps as a true freshman. If he works hard, has the benefit of those summer workouts, he'll look like a different player. And he is a big, massive guy right now, but can you imagine what he'll look like after a couple of years in a college weight room? So, again, pretty excited about where we sit. We got to finish. It doesn't matter. Like right now, it's kind of like the third quarter. It doesn't matter if you've got a two touchdown lead in the third quarter. You still got another quarter to play. That's kind of where we are. We've got the lead on a lot of these kids. Now we've got to finish. It doesn't matter who led in the third quarter. All the people care about is the final score. So we've got to do some good things to kind of get that thing done. All right, Portico, I've told you guys before, if I was moving to Starkville now, this is where I would move because I'd want to be closer to campus. 1.1 miles away from campus. And they're actually working on that road right there, the bridge, the old West Point Road bridge, right there at the intersection that leads you to Portico. And that's because many of you are moving out there. And so they're shoring up that bridge so you'll be able to take that right turn there at the four-way stop and get to downtown without any issue. You won't have to go all the way out to the highway. That's pretty cool, right? Yeah. So that's some things, probably some advancements around that area maybe you're unfamiliar with. But if you're looking to move right now, you're going to be out of luck at Phase 1. Phase 1 is completely full. Phase 2, construction kind of getting underway there. You can pick out your lot. You can pick out your floor plan and have some say in the home. And then the next thing you know, you don't have to move in and say, you know what, I like it, but no, you'll have some say in every bit of that. Give our friend Brooks Bryant a call. Brooks Bryant's my friend, your friend, a friend of Mississippi State, a friend of Starkville, and he can fill you in on this information. And listen, if you're dealing with a real estate agent and you're getting ready to move up here or you're considering that and they haven't mentioned Portico, you need to ask them why. It's one of the best places in Starkville to live. 601-416-8075. Again, 601-416-8075. He can also give you some Diamond Dog dugout stories while you're on the phone. That's a great thing about listening to the Boneyard. We connect you with the things that are going on here in Starkville. And so Brooks is very apprised of what's happening here, part of a great group of people that are bringing a wonderful residential development here to Starkville. You start with a 2-bedroom, 2-bath home. It goes up to 3 and 4. 4-bath, 4 bedrooms. So if you've got an investment property opportunity or perhaps this is your secondary home, Maybe it's your retirement home. Maybe you just want to live here year-round and be my neighbor. You can do that. Move to Portico. Make it your next move. All right, we have talked recently about big games in the Mississippi State Auburn series. We have had some big wins. We have not won as much as we'd liked, obviously, but we've had some big wins. And so let's talk about probably our biggest win over Auburn in recent years. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm talking about 2014, our win over Auburn that elevated us to number one in the country. We were number 3, they were number 2. Florida State was number 1. We beat Auburn, and we leapfrogged Florida State to go to number 1 for the first time in school history. Not the only time, the first time. Kind of like this first national championship. Not our only championship, our first one. You can correct people when they say that. But, State had had a pretty good run against Auburn. I guess, Dak had kind of figured some things out. People forget, Dak had to start his first SEC game at Auburn, right? And we still should have won the ball game. We should have. We didn't. We should have. 2014, we do get them. We get them in 14, and I'm sure Dak probably had that game circled on the calendar. If you go back and look at that 13 game and watch that game, Dak had the opportunity to run for a first down, elected not to. Threw the pass, ball goes incomplete. Ultimately, we lose the game. Well, this one we kind of removed all doubt. One of the most glorious days that Davis Wade Stadium has ever seen. Many of you guys were there. Those of you that weren't, you watched on TV. Really good game for us. So let's kind of take a quick look at this. I don't know what's going on with the internet these days. It's like you think you've got things figured out, and there's a new pop-up window, But so we actually went 3 and out on that first drive. And then Nick Marshall, who was very good at Auburn, is picked off by Jay Hughes. Their very first offensive play, we pick it off. Jay brings it back 18 yards to the 33, and then you see that touchdown pass to De'Runnya Wilson on 3rd and 11. You've seen it a million times. Bear flashes across the middle, catches it, breaks a couple tackles, takes a couple guys in the end zone. Now it's 7-0. Nick Marshall back to pass again. They throw left. Tevez Calhoun lowers the boom. And then Bernard McHenry jumps on the football. So 2 offensive plays for Auburn, 2 turnovers. Mississippi State again capitalizes on this. We're complete to Josh Robinson on a 25-yard pass. Touchdown. That was on 3rd and 4. The extra point's good. It's 14-0, and all of a sudden you're running away with this thing. People are thinking, oh, my goodness, this is incredible. Well, then Auburn gets a chance to have the ball on offense and not turn it over after one play. But they pick up, a couple of yards here. The next thing you know, there's a holding call on Sean Coleman. That's Mississippi native Sean Coleman of Olive Branch. Puts him behind the chains. They end up punting. We get the ball to 29. And we get it back, and we move it a little bit. We end up having a punt. Logan Cook with pretty good day as a kick guy. We'll get that a little bit later, though. But on this particular drive, we're complete to Robert Johnson, who gets it way down into Auburn territory, and we capitalize, and Dak Prescott runs in for a touchdown. It's 21-0, and we are just absolutely rolling Auburn. Nick Marshall gets the ball back. They get a first down, a second first down, and then there's a big sack by Matthew Wells. Remember him, right? Matt Wells out of Lawrence County, Mississippi. They attempt a field goal. They miss it. We decide to get a little bit cute here, and I think at times, too, we're our own worst enemy. And so we decide to let Logan Cook throw a pass, and it's picked off. It's a 3 and out, and we decide to, from our own 28, we're going to run the trick play there. And, of course, if it's complete, we're probably going to run them out of the stadium. Well, that allowed them to get a little juice and some field position, and they cash in there in the second quarter with a field goal. Now it's 21-3. We're still up 18 points. They got to score 3 touchdowns to catch us. Next drive, we throw another pick. This time it's Dak rather than Logan Cook. They put together a nice drive, and it's another field goal. 21-6. Bulldog defense playing well. Next drive, what do? It's another interception. On 2nd and 8 at the Auburn 13, Dak throws a pick in the end zone. And you look at this and say, man, we've had so many chances to put these guys away. And we didn't. That would do it. If you go up 28-6 right there midway through the second quarter, Church is pretty much out. Auburn doesn't capitalize. They end up punting. And then Jamal Graham fumbles the football. You remember that? Love that kid to death. But he fumbled the football. Auburn recovers with 6:20 to go in the quarter. And again, if we just stop shooting ourselves on the foot, it's like all those turnovers they gave us early, we gave them all right back. So that's 3 consecutive drives that we turned the football over. 4 consecutive drives. Logan Cook's interception, Dak has 2, and then we have a fumble from Jamal Graham. Let them hang around. And what happens? They go right down and score. They hit Duke Williams for a touchdown, makes it 21-13. And then the rains came. It's pretty crazy. Dak goes down, ends up scoring on a 15-yard run, and then makes it 28-13, so you feel like we're okay. We get a 3-and-out from the defense. They punt, and maybe this is when the rains came. I forget. I was walking up the tunnel with my stuff, and what do? We fumble again. It's like 3rd and 2 at our 35, and we fumble. Gus Wiley fumbles. Remember him out of Lee County? He fumbles, but we get it back, thank goodness, and then we basically run the clock out. And so you feel like, okay, it's 28-13. You knew Auburn was going to make a run at us in the second half, but we feel like we're okay because we had Dak. Auburn gets the ball first. They drive down and then end up – they didn't drive down, We made a couple nice plays here. There was even an offensive pass interference call on Sammy Coates, and he kind of had a history of that. So I think officials were looking for that. Nullified a 68-yard completion that was down to the state 2. It was kind of a ticky-tack call in many respects, to be honest with you. But when you've got that reputation, officials aren't going to give you the benefit of the doubt. We ended up getting a punt out of the deal rather than them having a first-and-goal opportunity. We don't capitalize, but we punt. Auburn comes back. Another Duke Williams touchdown. Makes it 28-20. And at this point, we're all getting a little bit nervous. It's like, we've had this big lead. A lot of our breaks, a lot of things have gone our way. And we're only up 8 points with plenty of ball game left. And the next thing you know, we get a completion to Fred for a first down. Then after that, we end up punting, and it's just a 37-yard punt from Logan Cook. Auburn has a chance to mount a drive here to tie the ball game with 4:36 to go, and you're thinking, plenty of time here, right? Well, they get a couple first downs, end up having a punt, and this time Smokey Graham gets the fair catch at the state 14. We can't do anything with it, though. Logan Cook, a 42-yard punt, down to the Auburn 36, and it basically runs out the quarter. They have a couple plays there. So we headed to the fourth, with State still hanging on to that lead, but we needed a big play to happen. We needed something to happen for us, and we get the punt return, the fair catch there at our 22. And then Dak and the Bulldogs put together a pretty good drive here. Pretty good drive, to say the least. And we go down and we make a field goal and probably should have been able to score here because we got down 1st and 10 at the Auburn 11, and then we were complete to Malcolm Johnson, and it brought up a 3rd and 1 situation at the 1, and Dak is sacked on the play. So we kick the field goal. It puts us up 31-20. Dak, I'm sure, would like to have that play back. Well, then the big play happens. The big play. We're up 2 scores. We've got a chance to put the kill shot on them. Logan Cook kicks off. Ricardo Lewis brings it out, and it's Quadri Antoine from Bell Chase High School. Had some injuries throughout his career. I expected a bigger career from him. It never really panned out. What does he do? He strips the football out, and Tolando Cleveland jumps on it at the Auburn 15. Now is the time for us to finish the deal. We absolutely do. Josh Robinson with the honors on a 1-yard run. Sobiesk on the extra point. Good. Makes it 38-20 in the fourth quarter. And at this point, we're just enjoying our day. That's how quickly the whole thing changes. It's like we're up 28-20. We get a field goal, and then we strip, fumble, and next thing you know, this game is over. For all intents and purposes, this game is over. They go down and kick a field goal that really proved to be of no consequence. We end up punting late to give them the ball back at their at their 30 with just under 5 minutes to play. They mount a decent drive. They're going down, and you think they're fixing to score. And then Justin Cox, the pride of West Point, Mississippi, makes a diving interception at the Mississippi State 3. And then that's when life began to change for all of us. We're like, what? This is what this feels like? Because, I mean, at this point, I know a lot of our fans were thinking, oh, they're going to go in and score. They're going to get the onside kick. They're going to score again. They're going to get another onside kick, and they're going to score again. That's just how we think. But now all of a sudden it's like, this thing is over. We've picked it off, and sure enough it is. And so we down the ball. We run. Dad gets a couple of runs here, and then we kneel and we take the lead down to 38-23 with no time left. I remember walking off the field, and there's Dr. Mark Keenum. And I remember the look on his face as you guys were absolutely going bananas in the stands at Davis Wade Stadium. And I remember the look on his face. It's something that I'll never forget. He simply couldn't believe what he was seeing. It was always that, the hope. Then there's Scott Strickland and everybody's there, and it's just like, did this really happen to us? We are the number 3 team in the country, and we just beat number 2. And I remember going to post game, and Dennis Dodd asked Dan Mullen, Dan, do you have the number 1 team in the country? And Dan says, I don't know, I don't get to vote. Why don't you guys ask Dennis? He has one. And then we were. One of the biggest wins in our program's history. And then, of course, the enemies of Mississippi State are like, well, Auburn didn't do this. It doesn't matter. All that matters is where they were when we played them. And we won. And so hopefully we can have a similar outcome this weekend. One certainly hope so. We don't have the same team, but I think we do have some quarterback that has some of those same attributes where he makes the people around him better. So we'll see. I'm hopeful we can go over there and win the ball game. I just think there's so much working against us. I can say, well, we're going on the road, but we have been a very good road team. We're 2-2 on the road. We should have won the 2 games we lost. Right? Should we have not beat Arkansas? Yes. Should we have not beat Memphis? Yes. We should be 4-0 on the road right now. We're not, but we have not been intimidated by road environments. So I think the early game helps us in that respect too, because we won't have all day to drink and party and be ruthless. I think the most important thing for us is to get off to a good start. We can't continue to get in these 10-0 holes and expect to come back and win ball games. You get off to a good start. If you can survive the first quarter, you got a good chance to win. I just hope that Zach Arnett and that group get off to a good start too. If we can go out there and get a turnover early, if we can shut them out that first quarter, if we can have to leave after the first quarter, I feel a whole lot better about life. Again, I got a couple more things to do before I get out of here. Let me get these things handled. I'm going to be on the road to Auburn. Look forward to seeing you guys. If you hadn't done so, go to dogpilethebook.com. You can pre-order copies of Dogpile. We hope to have it for you in time for Christmas. I can't believe I'm having to say that. When I put this thing out, I got done writing August 26th. We thought there's no chance we don't have this thing for Christmas. But still hopeful. We were hoping to get it late October. They pushed us back to late November. And so still got my fingers crossed, and we will update you as we go. While you're there, you can get copies of Flim Flam, Stark Villains, and Alpha Dogs. Those are all very, very important books if you're a Mississippi State fan. If you're looking for Bloomsville Leander, you can find it at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, BooksAMillion.com, or through your local bookstore. If you need personalization of that book, you can order it through Book Martin Cafe in downtown Starkville. I can ride down there and sign that for you, and happy to do it. Stark Villains gear, go to StarkVillains.com. I've seen some recent orders on that. They've reached out to me, and I know there's been some Stark Villains hoodies ordered. Appreciate you guys always repping the brand. Let's get out of here. Again, I got things to do, and I got to get on the road to Auburn. Looking forward to getting over there and covering a ball game. It's always so much fun. It never gets old. It never, ever, 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 ever gets old. Never. I don't ever take any of this for granted. Hope you don't either. Until next time, let's all live our lives in a way we make more friends than enemies, and people can see a difference in the way we live.